Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Evan Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejan Sarwick. Sejan?
Oh, I just realized that my drink has ice in it, Devin. This is the worst. I want to be a consummate professional whenever we do this job.
If it's any consolation, I know you just took a sip, but I did not hear the ice.
Okay.
You're not playing 1-2 switch over there, where I have to figure out how many cubes of ice are in your glass based only on the feel and sound of it.
That is it's a weird mini game. That's a weird game.
As a weird tech demo. To call it a game is an insult to games.
Well, yeah, I feel like they clearly wanted it to be like Wii Sports, right? Like that's what they thought they were putting out with that.
If it had been included for free, it might have been the next Wii Sports.
Well,
but to ask
to
for
my point,
$40,
yeah, to my point, like they fucked it real hard, right? Like they expected it to be Wii Sports, but then they went and they just botched the hell out of it. Oh, Nintendo.
All right,
I don't want to rag on them too hard, but I do have to talk about my OLED.
Whoa, well, that's exciting stuff to come. I'm very angry right now, and I'm super angry, and I want to purge the anger from my system so that we can move past it.
If two 30-year-old white dudes can have a podcast, what else could they do with it but besides berate their audience with their anger?
No. That's not what this is. This is an alternative to therapy for me. There's two types of 30-year-old white guy podcasts. Also, you keep saying that, but... No, I was in my 30s when we started this. I retract the statement I was about to make. It's like if we had started it in our 20s, then it's like a natural growth, progression, evolution thing. But that's not what this is. Anywho, I'm not angry about anything like serious. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to be seriously angry about in the world, and we might actually get to it because, ladies and gentlemen, before we go further, before we purge the anger, this is very, very whiplashy. You probably feel like you're watching I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry, and I'm sorry for that.
It's like a weird deep cut with our own audience that even they won't find that funny.
No, but I think but you know what? The consummate Say Report listener is looking at their device right now, going, I understood that one, and good for them. This is a rare Friday recording.
Okay.
We are recording the Friday before the Monday we usually release, and it's because CJ doesn't have Temple, and I wanted to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. No, we're doing the Friday night, and it's weird because usually we have like a couple of weekend nights. You know, I consider Friday night a weekend night.
Oh yeah, it is. Well, that's technically the weekend is Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday morning. Right?
But we usually have a couple of those nights to kind of get some last minute, like, you know, doing stuff under our belts. Not that I didn't do stuff this week. Definitely plenty to do with the premiere of She-Hulk, opening my OLED. There's been a couple of different things to talk about over here. But yeah, not this time. We might as well be recording on a Thursday. Hell, why not Wednesday? We should have recorded this last week.
Yeah, right? It feels weird, but it's an interesting experiment to record, because I also feel like there are things I want to talk about during the week that are then swallowed up in the Katamari Damacy that is my weekend. So, like, it's exciting. It's exciting to be recording on this Friday. It's also Friday energy. I don't think we ever, like, shove our Friday energy into the recording equipment. I don't know. There was a metaphor I was going for there.
And I'm glad you steered away from it. I'll be entirely honest. You pulled away from that edge right quick, and
I saw it,
but I'm glad.
I was noted. It's noted.
Yeah,
so it is a Friday recording, and really one of the only reasons I want to do a Friday recording is so that we can finally scoop John Oliver, because I feel like some of the stuff we have to talk about this week, he's going to cover on last week tonight, because he has no problems biting the hand what feeds him.
Maybe. We'll see. But my big thing with John is I love John Oliver, but because of the nature of his program and how often it is on, it is not like an every night show, like say like the Daily Show or something. So because of that, he often ends up a couple of weeks behind a trend sometimes for me. You know, I not to be too hipster about it, but it's most notable that we'll probably hear about any HBO related news in a month from now from him.
Well, you say that, but we're a month removed from when the HBO Max news started, which is the craziest thing to me. So I'm sort of anticipating that if there's any week to talk about it for him, it would be this week, especially since everything is getting canceled. And I could just see the bit where he like pleads for them not to cancel his show, despite all of the money he wastes for them. But again, HBO Max, that'll be a subject that we definitely touch on this. I want to talk about why I'm angry. And clearly I'm not
HBO.
That angry. No, but it is related to streaming.
Okay.
And you, with the premiere of She-Hulk, I haven't gotten to watch it yet.
Oh.
And the reason why I haven't gotten to watch it yet, and the reason why that makes me angry, that's where my anger comes from. And clearly, I have done so many other things that have like purged that anger from my system. But I want to talk about this because I'm fearful. It is something that I am scared about. Because the whole family was looking forward to She-Hulk, which is great. That feels very vindicating to me, that I somehow was able to whip my entire family into a frenzy to watch She-Hulk. Considering I'm the one who has the furthest to fall with this show, as the only person.
I will say, as somebody that watched it, but without you having watched it, we probably won't get too deep. The one thing I will say is it's a fun time. I'm excited to hear how you guys feel about it. I mean, it's a real fun time.
Dan Slott, who is She-Hulk basically to me, not like Jennifer Walters is her own character, but Dan Slott wrote that big arc that got me back into She-Hulk when I started collecting comics again, circa 2003. And it was excellent, and it really like influenced a lot of the ways that I looked at comics. So he gave the show his seal of approval after seeing the first 4 episodes, which that must be nice, right? I wish that I could see 4 episodes of She-Hulk and not just 1 episode.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that when you see it. But yeah.
But yes, so that conversation is coming. But what makes me upset is the whole family's excited. We sit down to watch it, and our Fire Stick, because we use an Amazon Fire Stick 4K Max on our TV, gets an error code 83. Now, do you have any idea what that means?
Error code 83 on an Amazon stick.
Well, no, it's a Disney error code. It is a Disney Plus error code. Yes.
No. I was gonna say that wasn't long enough for an Amazon error code.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. No, I don't know what a Disney error code 83 is. Is that the mouse is coming to get you? You get out of the house.
I mean, if you turn it on its side, I think it is a hidden Mickey. Actually, holy fuck, it is. Like I just.
You too.
I'm coming for you, Devin. Ho ho.
You have the rights to live.
Actually, interesting that you say I don't have the rights to live, because what it breaks down to is a DRM issue between the service and the device you're trying to watch it on.
So it used to be an issue with Netflix on certain devices where a DRM kind of behind the curtain for when I worked there for a little bit of time, depending on what devices you had, depending on how they hooked into the HDMI, that connection could set off bad DRM codes all the time. So if somebody was using, say, a cheap HDMI cord to run to a Roku device or something, they would get that kind of stuff. More frequently, we would see it with like people who had Android devices, like Raspberry Pis and things like that just had like, stuff loaded on them. Technically not illegal. It's like a weird gray area, because it's not technically a device that needs to have the license for Netflix. It is just a computer, which they can't say Netflix isn't available on computers, right? But people would run into those kinds of issues all the time on Netflix. So what we would normally suggest is you do like an update on your device or get an extension for the HDMI. What did you run into?
So obviously the first thing I did was restart my device, thinking that maybe there's an issue. When that didn't work, Disney's next thing that they suggest is to uninstall and reinstall the program, because it might have an update and it got stuck like in between updates, so it might be the problem. But the first thing they say is uninstall and reinstall Disney Plus to your device. We did that, and we were having a hell of a time reinstalling Disney Plus on the device, which made me a little bit nervous again. And then finally, once we get it installed, same issue. It is check your device for an update. And there wasn't an update when all of this started, but then there was an update like an hour after we'd been fiddling and futzing with it to try to get it to work. And still nothing. To the fact that my mother, old school as she is, called Disney Plus support today. So she talked to a Siegen out there who did what you did at Netflix,
Whew.
And that added a little bit more fuel to the fire of my anger before I was able to extinguish it. Because that number is a Hulu number. The number that if you type in Disney Plus support, the number that comes up is for Hulu support, which makes sense on some level. But then you talk to the person, you say, I was calling for Disney Plus. This is the number that I was given. They have to connect you to somebody who is actually a Disney Plus person.
Oh, that's a fantastic system there, Hulu Disney. That's what better way to piss off your customer than to route them through 3 different people before we can even talk about your issue.
Yeah. And then what's even worse is I get an email saying that a ticket has been opened with Hulu because that's where the call started. Right. And then how was my service from Hulu? And it's like, did you call Hulu? Did I give you the wrong number? And it's like, no, I did call Hulu, but that's the number you have to call. They don't have something better set up. They don't have an option for Disney Plus. You have to talk to a Hulu person first.
Or at the very least, just make it an all-encompassing, like, thank you for calling Disney Hulu or something. You know what I mean? Like, just make
and that's it. If you're calling to subscribe, press 1. If you're calling about an active subscription, press 2. If you have another issue with Disney Hulu, please press 3. And the person that you first got connected to was a Hulu person. So you know. That's also why isn't everybody just trained on everything, right? It's just, but it really kind of gave me, like we talked about, we discussed briefly a couple episodes ago, why is Hulu still there? Why is Hulu still a thing? What will happen to Hulu as there's a max exodus of programs from Hulu to Disney Plus? Most notably, The Orville is on Disney Plus. I don't know if we talked about that, but so is the 3rd season.
Yeah.
The full 3rd season. So if you didn't
Hulu
have
original 3rd season, right?
Yeah, is on Disney Plus a week after it concluded on Hulu. So I don't know. It's just, but it made me upset. And what makes me even more upset is she talks to this person about it. They're on the phone for like an hour, and obviously the first thing that he suggests is just what you suggested, but what I had already done. Like, there's a reason why I'm not the person who's calling the Hulu Disney number, because I'm going to say, yeah, I did everything you're going to tell me to do. That's why I'm talking to you. I need a man on the inside right now, Trevor.
Yeah, it's a weird thing in support where on the one hand, you have to go through all of these dumb first steps because it could be one of those, right? And not everybody tries them. But also, it really does help if everybody has tried them before they've called. So you got to find that weird balance between, like, did you do these things? Do I believe you did these things? Am I okay with the ways in which I think you did these things? And then you can go from there. And, like, I don't know, man. Like, I've pretty much grown to just take people at their word. And then when something doesn't work, like when we discover that it was maybe one of those stupid things they should have done and they said they did, but they clearly didn't, I just get to kind of rest in my smugness that they lied to me. You know what I mean? So I just assume that they did those things, I guess.
Yeah, right. And so I guess if I call and you're the person I get, I'd be okay with it. But yeah, and at the end of the day, we don't know why the problem's still persisting. We're going to credit you a month of Disney Plus. So right now I'm riding the Disney Plus train for free.
Yeah.
But there are no seats available and there are no doors, and it keeps passing the station by because I can't get on.
Yeah. Not everything. Before I dive into this is why everybody should just have a Google Chrome conversation. Like, there are definitely issues with Chrome as well. We've been having disconnect issues with specific apps. I think, actually, funny enough, I think Prime is one of the ones that we were having where, like, halfway through the show, it'll just stop playing. YouTube also kind of weirdly does that. I think the problem there, though, is that I don't necessarily use a specific device to start YouTube on my Google devices. I actually I don't want to say the phrase because it's listening and I don't want it to start YouTube right behind me. But essentially, I just tell Google to just play YouTube and it does, right? Or I can even say a specific video or a specific channel and it just plays it. And I think that a couple of the devices in the house are signed in via me, whereas a couple of the devices in the house are signed in via, like, say, like Tessa, and like because she is technically head of household on our YouTube account, like what she is paying for is the ad free. I'm not. but the devices are all connected in a way. So it's trying to. So I think what's happening is it's going to like play ads, but isn't supposed to play an ad, and it just confuses itself and shuts down. Like I think that's more what's happening with YouTube, and that's just a all around too many cooks in the kitchen. Like YouTube needs to figure out how families work type thing. But the Amazon one is just a nightmare. Like it could be for any like it could be at any time watching anything. It's not even consistent on like a specific show. I was watching Jack Reacher and having this problem 2 months ago. I was just watching a movie the other day. I was watching some Top Gear and it happened. Like it just sometimes it just randomly stops casting. So like I don't want to. So with all of that in mind, these kinds of DRM issues and stuff like that, because the way that the Google Chrome works and is more of like an antenna to just receive stuff off of devices and things like that, it doesn't really ever run into these particular problems. Like any problem that you have with an app is entirely on the application and not on the device. But everything that you're describing sounds like it's actually probably more likely a problem with that Fire Stick, man.
And you say that, but we were able to watch everything else that we were on. So it really does feel like it might be an app-specific problem. Now, it might be an app-specific problem related to that device, which is where I am at right now. I think that they were maybe going out, seeing each other, going steady, and then she found out that Disney Plus was cheating on her behind her back, because the Fire Stick's a lady in this scenario for some reason, and decided like, no, I don't want to do this anymore.
The bigger thing is, have you found any information of anybody else experiencing this issue before?
The problem is that you Google error code 83 Fire Stick, everybody has had this problem before. Yeah. And it's not like something that is new. Like if it were a new thing, then clearly they didn't upgrade something with the update or something happened, and it's just about getting the two services together. It doesn't seem like that's the issue. I don't know what it is. But like normally I wouldn't care, right? I understand that the internet is a fickle thing. I also understand that right now the internet is like a big wavy machine that is not happy with us as a species.
Oh, I thought you meant you and me, and I was like, what did we do this time?
No, like humanity. Like reading about like internet issues have been on the rise over this past week. And that's what I thought it was. I thought it was just like, oh, the heat messed up server farms or something like that. But then when everything else works, it gives me pause and makes me wonder if maybe something's going on.
Well, you know, one could point to the fact that you are talking about Amazon and thus probably using Amazon Web Services, which is half of the internet. And that could be definitely something if they're having kind of issues writ large. Meanwhile, the other half of the internet's on Google Web Services. And you know, like I said, Google's no gem either when it comes to this stuff. But yeah, I mean, like one of the big things that has always scared the fucking pants off of me, man, is got to be the idea of running out of server space, right? Running out of actual internet. Like the idea that we've always talked about the internet as if it is infinite, and there's always been people who have always been like, oh, it's not infinite, but technically for today, yeah, you're right? Like is always been kind of the attitude. We are slowly approaching that point where we're realizing maybe we should stop talking about it like being infinite all the time because we are running out of space. Now that's being like super dramatic because like we're not going to get there tomorrow, but we're going to get there at a point, right?
You know where we're at? We're at the point where you notice we're coming up on being full. We should probably do something about it.
Right.
As opposed to waking up one morning and you go to log into the internet and you get back error 407, internet full.
We've kind of passed the point of like those early dudes that were like, you hear this thing about carbon entering the atmosphere, that's going to be a problem someday. And then like in the 80s, somebody was like, no, for real, like we should start talking about this. That's where we're at now with like internet data storage, right? Is like we've been for years hearing guys offhand saying like, we probably should talk about this. Now is the point where we get the opportunity here to actually fix it before it's like detrimental. But like the number of people over the last 3 years that have become web-based humans in more ways than they ever expected, like, yeah, no shit, we're running into some problems suddenly, right?
So apologies to you in 2072 because I doubt we did anything.
Yeah,
using the scenario
like
about
a wax cylinder or some shit that we've gone back to.
I mean, if you're going to use the global warming as like the analog in the 80s, we got to do something, and We haven't done anything.
We haven't done jack squat. Well, I mean, like that's the sad truth about things with as far as like tech is concerned, right? Like, divorce it from the whole climate change fiasco that exists in this world. Like, name a good policy that a government has created about technology in the last like 5 years that has actually like improved the future of it. A lot of stuff has improved the now of it, sometimes at the detriment of the future, depending on what policy you're talking about. But like nobody ever looks to like 40 years in the future when they put rules in place to regulate this shit. So I'm a huge believer in the idea of regulation by authoritative bodies when necessary. Not to a
that's Siege and Sarowick saying that, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't know how to like put this any other way, but sometimes Daddy has to come in the room and slap the matches out of your hand because you keep lighting yourself on fire, right? Like that is just an unfortunate truth about some humans in this world. And because corporations are now people, I guess we can talk about them the same way, right? Like this idea being that somebody needs to step in and do something. But even those people that make those regulations, inevitably you have to come to the conclusion that they themselves are also just humans too, right? Like, so there's just we're just fucked all the way down when it comes to this sort of stuff. And the only thing that can really push us in the right direction is looking at something like, say, climate change and saying, well, we screwed that up, but let's not screw this up. And I mean, like, we are staring down the barrel of the potential like data disaster like 20, 30 years from now if we don't start doing something about it now. And that's just facts. That's something that people talk about regularly when you go to like security cons and stuff.
Yeah, and it's scary. Thanks for bringing it up. No, it's true, though. It is something that we should address now rather than later. And to answer your question about good regulation from the government, the immediate thing that jumps to mind is the Belgium decision to not allow loot boxes in their games. Mm-hmm. But then if you look at what the EAU did just this past week, they cited data from that to pass loot boxes and make them okay, still in the European Union. So,
yeah,
one
step forward, two steps back.
We come together because she's fucking that cat. Whoa. It ain't fiction, just a matter of fact. Paula Abdul is fucking scat hat cat. Hi. Who'd have thought? I need to stop. I'm in it. I'm stuck in it.
No, because at some point we're gonna have to pay rights or some shit. So
right, exactly. No, it's a parody. I think that falls under parody. It might also be slander.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what commentary is this satire necessarily making about your Paula Abdul or her song?
What it's talking about is in the 80s, we had a real hard-on for interspecies relationships.
You don't have to do this.
We do.
We all saw Moonwalker. We know what happens with that rabbit. Oh, man.
I mean, I was also going to talk about Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck definitely sets us off down a trail. Jessica Rabbit and Roger Rabbit. They're an interspecies relationship.
Thundercats.
Thundercats? They're all cats.
Yeah, sexy cats.
That's a good point. You know what? You think about all the anthropomorphized animal shows that happened. I think that's the only one that has a female, like, furry in it, right? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they have the Mona Lisa episode, but, like, that's the only one that has a female mutant who is named.
I mean, you had, like, Cheetara showing up in like, Super Friends and stuff. And
no, so Cheetara is Thundercats. You just mean
sorry.
Cheetah.
Cheetah, sorry, yeah. But
what a wonderful.
I was gonna think of Gargoyles. Gargoyles is another one that's pretty bad at like just a bunch of just big dudes and sexy ladies all in like ripped loincloths. That's like your main like characters.
That, and there's also the fact that, like, confirmed by the creator, Elisa Mazza is in love with Goliath, which is made so awesome in City of Stone. It's not City of Stone. It's Mirror Mirror, maybe. It's the one where all the gargoyles become humans.
Yeah.
And Eliza's like, oh my god, Goliath is so wonderful. You're a human, but she's become a gargoyle.
But I mean, was that not the case with that show?
Oh, that's totally the case with that show.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. I guess I just assumed that was the lore of that show. I didn't realize that was in question.
But it's one of those situations where, like, Oh, no, 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 no. It's not like, I love you, Elisa Maza, because you are my friend. Is romantic. Is romantic love if there was not a genetic wall between them.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I guess you know what I always.
That's what Greg Weisman said. That's the only reason why I pointed out. Is that
I understand. I would, and we are commenting on it because that's what we do on this show. But like the connection in my head with Goliath and like was Beast, right? Like this idea of it's Beauty and the Beast. It
is essentially the Beauty and the Beast TV show.
Yeah. I don't know. It's wild.
Which is really wild when you think like Little Mermaid got its own show and. You know, Lion King and Aladdin, they got their own shows. But the Beauty and the Beast show, if we're going to discount the weird one where Belle was a human person and had a magical storybook, which we're going to discount that one, because I'm sad that I even brought it up. It's making my head cry right now.
Was that more than like a couple of specials? I thought that was just the framing device for a couple of the like movies.
So the third movie uses it as a framing device, but they use it as a framing device. I mean, those movies essentially were pilots for TV shows. Right. And there is a Magical World of Belle, like 13 episode television show that spins off of whatever the third Beauty and the Beast movie is actually called.
Wait, is that the Christmas one? No,
the Christmas one is the second one. The Enchanted Christmas, Beauty and the Beast, The Enchanted Christmas, where Tim Curry plays the organ.
The organ, right? Yeah, right.
That like for that Forte Maximo is his name.
I would say that we have to dive down a Disney hole, but I guess you're kind of stuck right now. You can't get into it.
Otherwise, I'd be watching all the Disney stuff all the time. And you know what? It's a good excuse for me to go and watch some HBO Max because that fire's just continuing to burn.
Well, that's the crazy thing, right? Is it's actually, you say continuing to burn, and that is exactly right? Is like, this has been going on now for a while, and it's crazy to me how much public attention has been layered on anytime there is an announcement from, I will also throw Disney in this pot, but mostly Netflix, right? Anytime Netflix makes a move, everybody on the internet has something to say about it. And sometimes those reads are terrible reads. I'm just going to be honest. Like the ways in which people get like freaked out when there's a loss of 2 million subscriber announcement, but nobody reads that's a suspected loss, right? Like that's an estimated loss. Nobody goes that far with their comprehension of that number, right? So just as an example. But HBO has just been kind of slowly like falling apart from the inside since this whole thing with Discovery, right? And like we've kind of mentioned here or there that there's been some odd stuff going on as far as like the film side goes, and a little bit on the television side of like you know, killing the Arrowverse and stuff. But you know, everybody kind of saw that as like a mercy killing, right? At this point. But this idea being that like it's been a lot more than that, and now we're like looking at them just completely wrecking HBO Max and completely wrecking, maybe not the right way to go about it, to talk about it, but like they are kind of cutting off at the knees by axing tons of shows, including 20 original shows that were carried by HBO as like HBO Max premieres. What is the thought there? Especially because one or two of the shows that they're getting rid of are pretty well received shows. Like we're not talking about ones that I forgot were on there. I'm talking about ones that like people around me talk about, that we hear people on podcasts and on Twitch like talk about and reference and memes and all that shit. Like it's wild the choices that they've made.
Yeah, it is really kind of scary. And you say it's falling apart from the inside. There's some outside accelerant being applied. And like it is a fire, and it is fuel being poured onto the fire. And it really feels like the thought process behind it is sort of that idea of forest fires are natural. They stimulate new growth. And that is, it just feels so wrong on every, I don't even know how to approach it.
Well, what's crazy is that if they're gonna use that metaphor, right, to continue with the metaphor that they want to basically raise the ground so that they can grow new crops, right? Like this idea being, you gotta give us something. You got to announce like what's coming next at this point. We have just sat through weeks and weeks and weeks of them just going through and just axing all of this stuff that people were like kind of interested in talking about, was getting buzz going, was wild to see like what choices they were making. I mean, like, we talked a little bit about Batgirl, but it's in light of the recent news of how deep the cut goes. Like, it's actually super freaking crazy to consider that, like, this whole thing about like bringing Michael Keaton back to play Batman, and this was going to be the huge premiere to do that, and this was going to be their attempt at a No Way Home like multiverse style thing, and they just were like, no, we're just not doing it. And you know, I'm not saying this as somebody that is mad that it's happening. I'm not saying this because I feel like we deserve this stuff. I am saying this as somebody that just never thought they would dare, right? Like, at the end of the day, if we never get to see Batgirl,
yep.
We never get to see Batgirl. And that is wild to me. I wish I could have seen it, but I'm not going to go out there and start demanding like the Snyder cut, right? Like, that's just not, I cannot allow myself to get to that level on any of this stuff. And then that goes the same for all the stuff that they're canceling on HBO Max, right? Is the stuff that they're just getting rid of. Like, some of the stuff is pretty damn close to my heart right now. Like, close enough. J.G. Quintel's one that's on there is kind of probably some of the best cartoon television that I'm watching right now, outside of maybe something like Harley Quinn, which thankfully was not on that list yet, but God knows, right? And then, like, so there's just this whole kind of realm of like what are they going to do next? What could they do next that we've now entered? Because, like, I never expected them to even go this far.
And we talk about it's been going on for a while. My parents, I mentioned they had been away for a couple of weeks. Like, I had to inform my mother about a lot of the stuff that happened in those 2 weeks. But then also, in trying to get that information for her, I realized that it starts back as far as July 11th when TBS shows start getting pulled down because they're also wrapped up in the HBO Max Turner of it all. Like, the fact that, like, because Close Enough and other HBO Max stuff was going to TBS.
Right.
But then when they wanted to make a bigger focus on just showing baseball games and the Big Bang Theory there, because that's what makes the money, they, like, cut. That's why Samantha Bee was canceled, is related to the HBO Max stuff. It's why Chad, despite having a completed second season, I don't mean 90% complete, which is the number we're hearing from Batgirl. I am saying 10 full episodes shot and edited and ready to go out the door, and they're just not gonna do that so that they don't need to pay the back end of the contracts and the residuals. And that's crazy to me.
Well, right. Because that's the other thing, is the money that they are saving by doing this is only kind of coming from two places. First of all, the big rumors, and might as well point them out, although I don't have anything to back this up, but is supposedly taxes, right? Mm-hmm. Like, supposedly there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here that if they don't do A, B, or C, they don't have to include them in certain tax filings that allow them to get away with murder. Surprise, surprise. The more poignant one, the more like this affects actual humans and actually at the end of the day is kind of the shittiest thing that is coming out of this, is that a number of this stuff that they're doing is cutting off, like, paying editors, paying any back end film and television creators, because, like you're saying, stuff like this stuff just being straight up done means that really the only people that are getting screwed are these behind the scenes people. Yeah, there's definitely some contracts with like actors on screen and directors and showrunners that definitely say if the show is doing this well, at some point we hit a percentage bump, right? And that is also skeezy that they don't ever have to worry about that. But like, there is like immediate people that were just convinced that they were going to come into work the next day that just found out that, like, no, this thing just doesn't exist anymore. And it's not like they could have seen it coming because everything was like falling apart around them. Literally, like you're saying, with like a show like this, they came into work with like 90%, 100% of the job done. They just had to get it out the door. Their job was literally just to pick up the can and move it. And they were told, nope, sorry.
Chad had a release date for April. It was supposed to come out in April. And then they're like, we're going to delay it because baseball's doing big numbers right now. We just got this whole thing with MLB. Plus, in the summer, we're seeing that a lot of these channels are not doing new shows, so we will have an audience who is hungry for new content.
So, to that point, why would you ever go and make a deal or work with them ever again?
Right.
Like they are so killing themselves right now with this decision, because as an artist, if you got to that point where your project was good to go and was just about to premiere, you were literally sitting down with marketing yesterday to discuss advertising, and then suddenly you got a phone call saying we're pulling a plug on the whole thing for tax write-offs. Why would you ever go to them again? At least with the Netflix stuff, they were like, well, this is in development, so we're not going to push that. But there was a ton of stuff that was post-development that they were like, obviously, we're just going to let that stuff do its thing, right? I mean, yeah, you could probably pull an example or two out there where that sucked too, because like the whole streaming thing writ large is just kind of on fire right now.
Yeah.
But I just cannot believe how harsh of a move this really was from HBO Max. It's crazy.
And I don't know if we talked about it here. I think I read it after we had discussed Scoob and Batgirl that first time. The Scoob Orchestra and the person who wrote the score, the conductor of the score, were booked to record on like the 14th of last month. Like not last month. They were booked to record the entire score of the movie the Thursday after the announcement that it was canceled. And because they were contracted, because they had obligations that they needed to fulfill, even though they knew the movie wasn't coming out, they had to go to the studio and record the score for Scoob Haunted Holiday.
Because you can fuck with a editors union all you want, but you can't
fuck with the musicians. Yeah,
you cannot fuck with a music union. A musicians union. Yeah.
But it was this whole surreal thing where the conductor was like, so going into work to record this score that no one will ever hear, like but we're gonna do it, right? We've gotten paid for it. They booked the space. They didn't tell us not to show up, and it's one of those situations where
it's like a Christopher Guest film. Like, it's just like,
imagine if that's at the end of the day it is.
Oh,
and the other crazy thing is HBO Max had like a 94% consumer enjoyment rating. Right. When they surveyed it, it was the top of the streaming market.
Right.
So the fact that like it's a race to the bottom right now is insane.
It's crazy. It's nuts to watch. Yeah, like I said, I'm not gonna let this turn into like we are owed this or they shouldn't be doing that.
No.
I just like my big hopes from this is that there's some physical media versions of this stuff that I can get. Even something as dumb as like the Fungies, like that I was really enjoying. Like the Yodaba dinosaur thing that they were doing, which was like they were using Pebbles and Bam Bam from the Flintstones to teach kids about different types of dinosaurs. That was a really cool show, and that's not going to be there anymore. Aquaman, King of Atlantis, I would buy that in a heartbeat. That show is fucking ridiculous. It's like Super Jail for DC Universe. It's nuts.
Yeah, I'm upset because I put all this stuff off thinking that like there'll be a time, right? I'll have a time with it. Close enough. I loved that first season, but there were people I watched it with who wanted to continue watching it with me. So I'm like, I'll put it to the side. We can wait until we have like a weekend and just crunch through whatever episodes have been released. And to know that like that's not the case. By the time people are listening to this episode, none of this will be available on HBO Max anymore. And that's nuts. Like, and the really sad thing, and then we will move on to something else, but it's just more gas was thrown on the fire to the fact that like we have to take a deeper look into this. Like it just felt like something we need to talk about. The creator of Summer Camp Island going on Twitter and being in these articles saying like, I found out from the Variety article that my show was over.
Yep.
They didn't even contact me to let me know.
Well, and what's crazy about something like Summer Camp Island, for anybody that doesn't know the history there, is the first episode of it was a late night Cartoon Network premiere. They did that sometimes. It's how Adventure Time gets started and stuff like that. In fact, I think it might even be how not close enough, but regular show. Yeah. I think it might even be how regular show got started, right? Where they put something out there. Infinity Train's another good example of this too. They got scooped up in the HBO Max like premiere off of Cartoon Network and moved to HBO Max to be HBO Max exclusives to bring people there, and it was really cool because people were like, oh, they're gonna get a chance to really go dig deep and do some really cool stuff that they wouldn't otherwise on mainline television. I would argue Cartoon Network's usually pretty cool about that stuff, but they did get the opportunity to tell some some really important stories about otherness and about just like address a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world right now in terms of like LGBTQ issues and racism and stuff like that on these shows that made them standouts. Like they are phenomenal like examples of what animation can and should be, being produced by Cartoon Network, shown on HBO. It was just like it was such a win from a pop culture perspective. And to completely axe those shows is just like a kick in the gut to a very like specific audience.
I mean, another one is Meow Meow. That show getting picked up and extended, and then like you're gonna get a second season, but now that it's done, that second season's not gonna happen. Apple and Onion was another one that they're like, yeah, we have a second life for you here. Because I remember, like, I really liked that first season of Apple and Onion, and then there will be no Apple and Onion, and then suddenly, hey, we're going to do 2 more seasons. Like, it's crazy. It's like I don't know how to feel about it.
They've blown a lot of the goodwill that they've built up. You know, you said it already with that whole like survey and stuff. All of that goodwill that HBO Max had, where they were not Netflix, they were not Disney, they've just completely lost it in this entire fiasco.
Yeah. All right. So last couple of things, and these are the sad things about it. Then we will move on to something else. If the tax write-off issue is true, that is the worst possible thing for any of this stuff, because the show that we love on this show, CJ and I love, we don't talk about it near enough, and I don't even know if we've ever talked about it, is Megas XLR. Because chicks dig giant robots. I mean, dudes dig giant robots. We dig giant robots.
Giant robots. Yeah.
It's just how it works. That show, 26 episodes, and Cartoon Network used it as a tax write-down. And because of its usage as a tax write-down, that is one of the main hurdles that needs to be cleared before they could do anything else with it. Because, like, the world is ripe for more Megas XLR. It's one of those situations where, it's just been talked about a lot lately, and I think the reason for that is that the 4K restoration project of Megas XLR, which Siegen always likes to point out, you need a petabyte of like free space in order to download it.
I mean, it's a fair thing to warn people about.
It is a lot. We
recommend this show wholeheartedly. Just be aware that you need to have a couple of hard drives around.
I can't believe I got it all on my old Dell Optiplex that I like sometimes use in the basement.
Did you like summon a demon to like latch onto it to store the rest? Like,
you need to understand that like this computer is a bare bones baby that I built specifically when I was trying to stream Link to the Past racing. So it is like I didn't use it for really anything except for creating the ROMs.
And
but
now
when
it has become Megas.
yeah, it's essentially the heart of Megas. No, because I went through it and I'm like, I needed to buy a hard drive. That was the problem. It came as like the shell of a Dell Optiplex with all the like really nice computing stuff you get in a Dell Optiplex, but they're like, you need to supply your own hard drive. The shell cost me $200, so I'm like, well, I'm going to buy the biggest hard drive I can find. And then all I used it for was to create, race ROMs to do Link to the Past. So I'm like, I need something that's just got a lot of space. And I'm like, let's see if it can get on this. And I got it on this Siege, and I did
Wild.
it.
Cenobyte drive, by the way. That's what you would call the demon that latches onto your computer to save you storage.
Yeah, right.
Space.
The Cenobyte drive. I was impressed. I remembered petabyte from watching Ocean's 13. So it's just that whole thing. So if it's true that this stuff is being used as write-offs and write-downs, like the promise from the Summer Camp Island creator that the story will be finished, that might not happen. Because legally you won't be able to do anything with it because it is considered abandoned media that like was not profitable. So then if you try to make a profit off of it, it will cause bigger tax headaches for HBO Max.
Yeah, so the other thing is that I'm trying to decide if I just want to bite the bullet this weekend and just spend a bunch of money buying episodes on Google while they're up, because I have seen stuff go up for sale on Google that I have bought that are no longer for sale on Google, but I still have the ability to watch because I bought them. That's one of the rare cases of that happening. And so I'm worried that they're going to be off of the Google store after this weekend. So I might go in and just buy up like all of the seasons of Close Enough and stuff like that.
There is a tweet that I've seen circulating Twitter of all 3 seasons of Close Enough on a Blu-ray disc. Mm-hmm. Just marked Close Enough season 1 through 3. Do not erase.
Awesome.
Because like that's the thing. It's one of those things. If you have access to it, burn it, save it, however you can.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening.
And it's really the wildest thing that you really need to, if you get the chance to see, has got to be Aquaman, because of what they decide to do with it. Because it's a 3-episode show, but each episode varies between like 45 and 50 minutes. Like it's one of those lengths. But the animation style and the story, it's all interconnected. It's one of the craziest things that DC has really allowed to be in the world, and like the fact that it's going away kind of makes sense for it in a weird way. So check it out, and if anybody can save that for me and send that my way, just tweet me. Like,
yeah. So it's that. But then the more important thing, the more Say Report related thing about all of this is Airheads is leaving HBO Max at the end of August. Airheads is probably my favorite Brendan Fraser movie. I'm just gonna say that. And we watch a lot of Brendan Fraser movies, guys. I'm a pretty big fan of the man. And I think it's Airheads. And I know that for a fact I'm collecting the family together to watch Airheads before it's gone. Because I don't know if you remember when we recorded our Airheads episode, one of the reasons that it took so long is that Airheads was just unavailable.
Right.
Like you were lucky to stumble upon one in a DVD shop.
Yeah, like a used DVD store, right? Yeah.
And and I still think that was like some sort of magical portal that you wandered through. Have you ever been back there, Siegen?
Yeah, they have a really weird hentai room in the back, and I try not to give them too much of my patronage, but they did have Airheads, so I needed to do that at least.
That reminds me of the time I went to you remember any of the times we went to Lemonster with the Irene Ryans?
Oh yeah,
and we would get pizza at Lemonster House of Pizza, and because right next to it was a Paradise Video, we'd check out that Paradise Video. It's where I bought a in-box copy of Dick Tracy.
Nice.
I don't know. No, that was me and Jamie who were on that trip.
Yeah, I was not. I'll be honest. Whenever I went out to Lemonster specifically for that KCSEDF, I spent a lot of time in the hotel hanging out with people and basically like sleeping in bathtubs.
Yeah. I mean, it was fun to go out. I was never honored because they never honored like technical people, even though they came out and they would have us judged and be like, we would like you to come. But they wouldn't pay for us. They'd only pay for the actors and the directors. I'm not sore about it. It's just a thing that happened. But we would go out to have fun with people. And that Paradise Video, right? I would have to imagine you've been to that Paradise Video with me at least once or twice, though, right?
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
Especially because we went to Lemonster more than once for chicken.
For chicken, yeah. Exactly. Oh, man, chicken. Sorry. Borders is gone, but another place is selling the wings still. It's the same sauce. Oh, Siegen. Other things, other plans and stuff to talk about later on when we're done. Friday energy, man. It is different. It hits different. I went into that Paradise Video because it's still a store, or at least it was pre-pandemic. So this was like 2018 that we went in there, and they have an adults only room. And the person that I went to the store with, like, asked the girl behind the counter if it was really an adults only room or if it was just like a cheeky way to say employees only, and the daggers that she stared right into his heart for asking such a stupid question was something that I will always remember.
Yeah, well, because it almost sounds like he was trying to get her to go back there with him for some stuff.
Yeah, it was weird. It was like this weird thing where he's like, is that real? And it's like, is real. Like
your adults only room. Sure, it's not just for employees.
Yeah. Oh man, if you knew the identity of the person I'm talking about, it becomes even funnier, Siegen. We're not gonna blast it here, but I will tell you after the episode. But that's it. I mean, like, that's weird, right? That was an actual place where you could still rent DVDs, and then like they had the adults only room. Those are the things that persist, right? Is porno. Because, I don't know, the internet's not always going to be there, man.
The internet wasn't always here, and it will not always be in the future. I think we talked about that already.
Yeah. Right? So preserve physical copies of the stuff you're into, people, be it porn or HBO originals.
Oh, my God. Imagine if that's the route that Discovery HBO goes with the app of the future, is like, there's an adult section now. Oh, man.
As long as there's profiles like Disney, we'll be fine. All right, Siege. You said that there was something that you wanted to talk about, and I bet it segues very nicely from all of the DC stuff sitting down at HBO Max.
And the adult stuff we just talked about.
Well,
Yeah,
there you go.
So one of the things that I've been doing the last few weeks, and I've finally gotten to the end of the run that I'm currently on, so it makes sense for that I didn't talk about it before, as much as I was giving Devin shit about it before the episode. Is I've been diving into some of the DC Black Label stuff. How much do you know about what they've been doing with their Black Label?
I saw the outline of Batman's penis in shadow.
Yeah.
I really would have never pegged him as circumcised, but I guess Wayne is short for Wayneberg or something. I don't. That
was a
really...
good try. See, I was gonna say everybody is when you join Ra's al Ghul's club,
we find the foreskin is a problem in the Lazarus pits.
We're not doing this. We're not gonna. I've come for Damien's foreskin. He is my grandson.
The foreskin is the most powerful part of skin in the whole body, Batman.
The worst part is any of this could be a Black Label like DC story, right?
Or Harley Quinn, right?
The foreskin of the dragon. There is so Black Label is.
You know who's not circumcised?
Okay.
Superman, and probably Killer Croc, because both of them have knife-proof skin. Oh my God, I never really considered the fact that Superman can't be circumcised, right? There's not some sort of kryptonite bris out there, is there?
Look, man, once he got to the Fortress of Solitude, I don't know what Kryptonian, the party they threw. I don't know where I was going with that, but
before we send you to Earth, my son, we have to circumcise you.
Before we send you to Earth, we have to circumcise you. That's my best Marlon Brando.
I thought you were doing Russell Crowe.
Well,
I flicker too hard.
I'm sorry. But there's so Black Label
it's
is
adult.
What Vertigo was for them for a while, right? Like when DC first acquired Vertigo Comics, they used it as the label that they could put on some of their more adult fare. But then a few years ago, I would say like 5 or 6 years ago, they kind of just enveloped Vertigo. Very famously, we're just like, nah, it's just all DC now. And then I think they realized real quickly that they needed something, because they had a lot of artists that were very good artists with very solid contracts that were just like, yeah, we want to do adult shit, and this is ridiculous that we can't now because we're under this umbrella. And so, like, they found themselves with a bunch of really good artists with a lot of mature stories to tell. So they kind of took a step back and created DC Black Label, right? And there's been some good ones. I will say, like, Batman Damned is really good, where he teams up with, like, Constantine. I'm going to reference a lot of Batman. There's been stuff besides Batman in the Black Label line, but, like, mostly they've been using it to allow Batman to do some crazy-ass shit. Batman Meets the Max was one of the ones that they did, which was really wild. They also have been doing a lot of Joker stuff, a lot of Joker and Harley stuff, for good or for ill. It has been wavering quality. Like, across the board, you will see there are some of this stuff that is being praised, and the fact that Black Label exists allows this kind of art to be back in comics, and as far as on the DC tree goes, at least. But there's this whole other side to it where a lot of artists are just using it to be edgelords. There's a lot of really shittier stuff you can imagine, especially with like the Joker Harley stuff, where there's just some unnecessary, like, early 90s nonsense that goes on with characters that, like, it feels like I thought we got past this, right? So
my mind immediately jumps to Stan Lee and Brody Bruce talking in Mallrats and him being like, well, with the comic code, we couldn't address these things. But now we can show you the thing's weird orange penis.
I mean, and it feels like that's kind of what's going on, right? Is that there's a room full of people who are just having these conversations about, like, you know, well, now that we've got the ability to, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Why don't we show Batman have sex with this character, with that character, with this character? Like, that seems to be the whole conversation, right?
Batman doesn't eat pussy. Oh, well, there's a Black Label that begs to differ.
Yeah, HBO Max. Maybe they'll go back and finally do that episode. But there is, so the latest one that's come out for me that I latched onto was Bill what's his name? Witherby Willingham, I think is his name, that does the Fables storyline, just did a Batman versus Bigby story. And Bigby, for anybody that doesn't know, is the main character of his Fables story, one of the main characters of his Fables stories. He is the big bad wolf in human form, and he's like a gritty detective. I could try and explain Fables right now, but do yourself a favor and just watch Once Upon a Time, and then just imagine there's guns. That's basically.
I was going to say watch Hoodwinked, but imagine there's guns.
Oh man, there's a lot of really beautiful stories in Fable. I mean, it really is some of the best comic lore and some of the best art
when that
has
came
ever come
across
out of
my
comics.
desk. I was so enthralled by it because
Yeah.
it was so different and it was so exciting. I mean, I'm someone who grew up with the true story of the three little pigs, and
Yeah,
like to see that like the next stage of that evolution was awesome.
Yeah, and William really does a phenomenal job of evolving the concept of like fairy tale, right? And there's like a lot of references to stuff like Sandman and stuff in it, and Constantine, and like there's the interacting with the rest of the DC universe is not too weird of an idea for Fables, but it is not something that usually happens. So when something comes out that is like Bigby versus Batman, like that is something that's going to catch people's eye, right? And then add to that it's under the Black Label, so they get to do some shit with it, which is cool because Fables is on the more adult side of some stories in terms of the violence, like they really lean into the grim fairy tale aspect of some of the fairy tales, the ways in which certain characters are consistently dying or evil and all sorts of stuff like that, right? For a long time in the early runs of those comics, Bluebeard is one of the main characters, and he is everything you expect him to be, as like this like upstanding noble within the community, but also a psychopath, right? Like it's just they don't shy away from any of it. That's the point of those stories of Fables. I mean, so Batman coming into that was interesting, but right away it's Willingham writing it, and so what happens is Bruce / Batman, and he's mostly more Batman for the whole thing, really. He's only Bruce, I think, in like one issue out of the 6. He comes across not as a complex, nuanced look into Batman, but rather the like mythological concept of Batman, and that means like warts and all. He is like over the top, like violent, and like he has like stupid one-liners when like he punches people. Anything that anybody out there ever says Batman is, but then anybody that reads Batman like rolls their eyes, like Willingham leans into it, and I think purposefully so. But like for instance, there's an entire like training school of Robins, which I think is out of the comics, but the ways in which it leans into he basically runs a group of child soldiers is nuts.
Jeez.
Yeah, and he depends on them multiple times within the story. Like he's like, send me Robins 23 and 26, and like it's just like, oh, okay, where it is just wild, like the ways in which they kind of just let him just be kind of atrocious as like a character.
After my son was a Robin who passed away, I decided no more names.
Yeah. Oh man, it's unfortunate because the story itself is really interesting. There's a character going around killing people in Gotham high society because they're collecting books for some reason. And then, of course, that's how the Fables get involved, is because you find out that there's a certain book that has gotten out, right? And they get into some of the good Fables lore of like traveling dimensions and things like that, and how they have to kind of keep a cap on what the Fables are doing in the world and the ways in which Bigby does that. It feeds into the Fables stuff perfectly. It does not work for me as a Batman story, and that's so unfortunate. Because compared to something like when they did Batman meets the Ninja Turtles versus the Ninja Turtles, when they like 5 years ago, I think is when they did that run, and then they ended up actually doing like a movie version of it,
yeah,
because it did so well. So they've got 2 volumes of that, plus there's the movie, like, and those are phenomenal, like Batman stories on top of being super fun Turtle stories. So like, it's really unfortunate because I've seen this concept work before, and to see it not work so well with one of my favorite writers was a bit of a bummer. But that's consistently been the story with Black Label, is there's just so much good stuff that is happening. There's just enough good stuff that is happening that like I totally want it to keep going. I just can't point to one single run besides maybe like Batman Damned, that is like perfect all the way through. Like everything comes with like a caveat in this so far in their line.
I don't know. It's interesting because you compare the Fables. Now, Fables, I read a bunch when it was kind of new, and then I've sort of drifted off from it. So any of my knowledge from it is very old and definitely being looked at through a sort of nostalgic lens. So take that for what it is while I say this. But it really sounds like they give Batman the Fable treatment when you talk about, we're going to talk more about how he is known as a character, how he is perceived, and put that into the Fables world. So while you as a reader don't get it, it feels like that was the point. And the only reason I say that is you then compare it to something like Batman versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, say what you will about them, they're probably the most malleable property in all of fiction.
Oh yeah, I mean that's why they work so well in what's the DC fighting game there that they ended up showing up in?
Infamous 2, right?
Infamous?
Not Infamous. It's something like that, right? It's in something.
How have we forgotten about this?
Injustice. It's Injustice.
I was going to say, I can tell you everything about the story for this stupid game, but I can't tell you that. But yeah, they I mean, like, it's why they work beautifully in the Injustice games. It's actually, like, it actually redeems that second game for me when they brought the Turtles in.
The fact that you're all 4 Turtles and how that works, where they show up for moves and stuff, is very cool. But everybody thinks about the problem with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? And I want to put on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hat because it's something that I really had to deal with this year when Shredder's Revenge came out. Because I was excited for Shredder's Revenge to come out, but because of everything that I love about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But for most people, it's just the 1987 cartoon show, which makes sense. It was hyper popular and launched 1,000 ships in merchandising. And
I mean, the movies themselves end up really kind of leaning into them, right? Like 2 and 3 are so
2 and 3 are so well, and it's really weird, right? I can't wait till we get to do 3 next Christmas.
Yeah,
it's something that I look forward to.
3 is a weird animal for sure.
3 is something I'm so excited to look into, but the second one really does lean into the cartoon. But one of the main reasons that it leans into the cartoon was Jim Henson was so upset that something he created in his creature shop was being so violent and was such a violent thing, that the only way they could continue to use that stuff in the second movie was if they pared back on the violence. He didn't want them to use weapons. It's why Michelangelo uses the salami sticks.
Salami,
and like there's no cutting or killing or anything like that. Then one of the reasons why Casey Jones is completely eliminated is just the fact that, like, he's a little too intense for what Jim wants these characters to be. Like,
we watched him straight up try and murder a dude with a garbage truck. So it makes sense. But then the third movie, right? I guess here's a little trailer for something that we're not going to talk about for 18 months, or something like that, maybe 16. Like, he comes back, but also the costumes are so crap in the third movie because it's not Jim Henson anymore. Right.
And but because of that, they got to explore some real fun stuff that is more related to the comics.
Right.
That I'm super excited that ever since I read those comics, I never knew those comics existed when I saw the movie as a kid. I just thought it was funny that Michelangelo was riding the horse backwards. Like, that's peak comedy for me in 1991. Or 93, it would have to be 93. That's the whole point of it. Why we're waiting until next year. That's what works for me in that movie.
Yeah.
And then to read that comic so many years later and be like, this is lifted directly from the comics. And not like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Adventure comics that Archie was printing, but the actual Mirage comics.
Right.
And when Eastman and Laird were coming back to steer the ship, because one of the other reasons that you have that malleability of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is from issue 12 through to 45 of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics, it's what they call the guest era of that first volume. And literally, they were letting anybody who had a story who they had interacted with in the world of comics come in and write stories with those characters. Yeah. Like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, not to say that they invented the multiverse. The multiverse is something that's existed for a very long time, right? But infinite versions of the Ninja Turtles started right in that first volume. because it's pretty clear that, like, this is not Eastman and Laird's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah,
in this
and I
book.
think to that point, right, is reading this one, and you're right. Like you have to look at the way that Batman's being portrayed and say this is not, this is not King's version, this is not Snyder's version. And to that point, there have been drastic changes in Batman's through different writers and artists over the years for sure. Frank Miller's Batman.
It really sounds
right?
like Miller's Batman when you talk about the way of him. Like,
imagine Miller's Batman, but with better art. That was not fair. The art on Miller's Batman is phenomenal for that style of comic, but the art in Fables and then inevitably in
well, I imagine it's colored too, right? Like it's
yeah. But so that's the thing, right? Is like I think you're completely right. I mean, Willingham is at the wheel, so like it's his story. He's definitely focusing on the villain. Surprise, surprise, turns out to be a fable. Like that's the whole point. Is it's a mystery about who it is behind everything, and clearly the reason that Bigby is in Gotham is because it's a fable. Like,
wouldn't it be cool if it were the Fable Mad Hatter and not the regular Mad Hatter?
I mean, in a weird kind of way, it almost feels like that for a couple of issues, but no, it's there's some really fun stuff that they play with, and leave the door open for future possibilities and all that sort of stuff. But it is that very nature of the auteur of letting one person kind of really come in and say, I'm going to do this one story completely out of time. Like that's the other thing about all these Black Label stories is that they are not part of continuities. Like they are not
Elseworld stories, essentially, right?
Yeah, or they could be in the worlds as they exist. They kind of just don't disregard anything. They just kind of also don't move the dial anywhere, right? Like that's just so Elseworlds is definitely a good way of looking at it. But because of that, like you're either in it or you're not. There's no like, well, I didn't like this particular arc, but there'll be one down the line that I really appreciate. And you got that benefit with guys like, I'm a sucker for Scott Snyder's run of Batman, but there are definitely arcs of that I do not read as much as I read, say, The Court of Owls, right?
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that coin, Tom King. There are arcs of his that I don't mind at all. I actually quite enjoy, but the majority of his work is just not my bag. So like, you get that benefit with longer runs and with different people exploring the character as a character versus these 6 to 12 issue books where it's just like I have a story to tell. Let me get to that story. Disregard anything you ever knew about this character so that I can get my point across. And that is not to say I can't enjoy that style of comic. It's just I have yet to find one in Black Label that justifies it yet.
And that's interesting because when you said Black Label is hit or miss, my initial response was, well, that's comics, right? Yeah. Sometimes, Ultimate Spider-Man is something that I will always cite in terms of just like hit or miss. The Hollywood storyline arc is one of the greatest things I've ever read because it basically takes all the vitriol that people were talking about with the Spider-Man movie and then works through it in the comics because the Spider-Man story is going to be a movie, and they just have so much fun with it. But you have Doc Ock as the villain, and it's just, there's a sequence in Ultimate Spider-Man 55 where he is having a conversation with his tentacles, and it is one of the greatest. It's like one of the things that reinvigorated my love for comic book storytelling. But then by like issue 65, they do a Breakfast Club parody, and I'm just like, is this the same book? Am I reading the same book? Yeah. And what's really disappointing about that is like that Breakfast Club parody comes right before what is another one of those issues of comics that just blows my mind, where Venom in the Ultimate Spider-Man universe is like an antigen, like it's a virus sort of thing that Peter's father and Eddie's father had created. And then when carnages come of it, it's born from being in contact with Peter's blood, but also Gwen Stacy's blood. So it's like they deal with the whole clone saga bullshit in Ultimate Spider-Man by having Gwen Stacy come back, but also be Carnage. And I'm like, this is incredible. But the thing that kicks that off is this out of fucking place Breakfast Club parody that makes no fucking sense.
Yeah.
In terms of the rest of the book. But it's like, Gwen comes back at the end of it, and you're like, well, we watched Gwen Stacy die. We watched that happen. How was she back?
Yeah,
that's just comics, right, brother.
It is comics. I think what it comes from though is that this is the existence of Black Label is clearly a reaction to the loss of kind of Vertigo and that level of comic for DC not having that mature label anymore, right? But the problem is they want to present it, they want to market it as it being, I mean, the Black Label is what they call it. Like that's like the highest tier of whiskey. Like it is this
Blue Label is actually the highest tier of whiskey.
But I mean, like, but in that idea,
I get what you're
it's
saying.
a higher tier. Sorry, is what I should have said. This idea being like it is the fine wine of DC Comics. But if that's the case, they've really got to make sure that what they're putting out fires on all cylinders. And this isn't just a matter of me just saying I'm not enjoying this. I have yet to see the community really enjoy like a particular one. You know, they're using it to do some really good stuff with Constantine. They brought back Human Target via Black Label. Like there's been
I need to read that because I love Human Target.
The big one that I want to read is they did a whole run of The Question, the many deaths of Vic Sage. Like that sounds really cool. Like there's some potential for some really good stories, and I think that's kind of where they keep falling on their face, is that they get all this potential built up, they have a really good artist, they have a really good writer involved, they have a really good concept, but then something always just kind of doesn't quite take off. They need their like they need their Watchmen, they need that thing that they're putting out that is just gangbusters. And when they finally get there, it's going to be awesome, but they have not been able to pull that out. Vertigo had that all the fucking time.
Vertigo did have that all the fucking time. Oh, there's a Grifter figure out now that makes me super happy. Sorry, just thinking about things that are out there in the world related to that. Also, to put my producer hat on for a second in the middle of this episode, we got to do an episode on The Losers.
Yeah,
like, I love that fucking movie so much, and the book too. I love the book.
Yeah, man. I mean, like the Vertigo stuff, like the Vertigo movies, like were crazy. The Losers, Jonah Hex was in there, right? Yeah. There was a third one, I think. I'd have to look into it, but man, yeah, I love those movies.
Yeah, but yeah, we should do The Losers sometime because that is a movie that like I could watch that movie right now. I could stop the podcast where we say Will take us home, and then bam, we'll watch The Losers, and my night is perfect. Any anger at not being able to watch She-Hulk is gone. Well, I'll get there. I'll be able to watch She-Hulk. I'm so excited for it. And
what's his name? That Poochie, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, Pooch.
Pooch.
It's so good.
God, yeah. Like I randomly put it on. It was also one of my favorite movies to cite really early on of a Marvel actor in a different comic movie. Yeah. Right. Oh man.
That's a good movie. And I'm freaking ending. The Losers. We're going to cover it sometime. That's the Say Report, promise.
I mean, we've never really dug into Sejan's love of Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and I'm totally down to do it someday. So let's do it.
Yeah, I love that movie. I love that movie so much. Sorry.
It opens up with like the death of a school full of children.
Yeah, it is not a light movie. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's heavy stuff. So look forward to that coming. They're not going to turn this into The Losers in the middle of it. That's what Friday Energy is, though. Friday Energy is right now an hour and 10 minutes into the podcast, being like, now we're going to talk about The Losers for 3 hours, even though we haven't seen it in weeks. But we're not going to do that. We're gonna steer the ship straight. We're going to apologize. We're going to make a promise again. Kirby's Dream Buffet came out, and I was really excited to play Kirby's Dream Buffet, but I haven't gotten a chance to yet.
Yeah, I am very excited to play it as well, and the fact that there is couch co-op for it is definitely a huge selling point in this house. We just need the weekend to do it. Funny enough, I bet if we were recorded on Sunday, I would have at least had
I think that we would have been able to cut off a couple hours to play it online too, right? Like it was trying to shove it in. So Kirby's Dream Buffet is out there. Clearly we both want to try it out based on everything we talk about with the Nintendo Switch here. We haven't yet, but next episode, if we don't talk about it, you write to us on Twitter at the Say Report, and we'll send out a shiny $1 coin to you.
Yeah. No, I need to do some experimental stuff with my OLED.
Yeah. So what
Switch
happened with that?
Everything is going fine. So I got the OLED Switch this week. And I was trying to like figure out what I wanted to do. I had bought Luigi's Mansion to play with it, but I didn't want to start that just yet because I wanted to do something on it that I had already played, so that I kind of got a sense of like, you know, I knew where my money had gone. The fact that I had bought this better one to sit right next to my old one as well, right? Like, so I literally sit next to it if I want to share data. But I want I wanted to see, like, what is the benefit of this over the old one that I had already. So I dove back into Mario Rabbids because that was the first game that I played, period, and then played to completion on the Switch, on the main Switch. So I thought it would be a fun time to do it again on this one, and I have had consistent crashing issues.
Really?
Now, the reason that I need to try some other stuff is I just need to make sure it's not just the game. I mean, at this point, I have I bought that game and the Switch when that game came out. So what, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago? So like we're getting on there with the Switch. It's probably 6 years is probably too much, but like we are moving along in terms of time with that bad boy. And so it could be just that the game is just too old. It could be that maybe that game, just, you know, being designed for the main Switch, has some weird issues trying to work on the powerhouse that is the OLED. I don't know. So I've got to try out some other stuff with it, because I will say that I've done some other downloaded games and stuff like that, and I don't think I remember running into any issues there. I feel like I would. I feel like that would have been like proof that it wasn't just the game. So I got to figure out what's going on. It's a little disappointing because otherwise the thing is a fucking beauty, and like I have it hardwired, so things are downloading really quick, and I'm able to like play all sorts of like old stuff and new stuff, and it's beautiful, and I can bring it with me everywhere. The functionality of the lean back is so nice. The like kickstand on it is choice. Like I really am enjoying a lot of things about it. It's just this one big glaring issue that like I have sat down for, let's say conservatively, 5 sessions of playing this game. Of those 5 sessions, 3 times it has crashed on me and I've had to restart. Now luckily the game is pretty consistently saving, so I've never like lost a good amount of time. Like it's always been like, oh, the last minute of play. It still sucks in a puzzle game because like you finally figure it out, you go to hit to conclude, and then suddenly it crashes, so you got to do the whole thing again. But at least I know the solution at that point, so I can get through stuff quick, right? So like it's okay. It's not driving me away from it. It's not going to make me slam the thing into the ground or anything like that. But I am really not happy that the first game I've tried to play on this game, on the full-fledged game I've tried to play on this system, has had consistent crash issues.
Yeah, that is. So I do want to just clarify. I want to make sure this is a physical game that you purchased.
Yes,
right?
It is a physical. It is I don't know what to call it. Not a disc, a cart. I guess
it's a cart.
It
they do call them carts. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a physical cart. Kurt. It's so tiny. I don't want to
Kurt
call it
Cobain, apparently. It's killing itself.
Oh man! Oof. Ouch. Are you proud of that?
A little. It felt pretty much like we're removed far enough from the fact that it happened.
Like Dave Grohl, I'd really like to someday meet him. If this is the thing he knows about us, we're screwed.
You know what? I'd rather meet Chris Novoselic, and that's me. I'll just be honest with you.
This is all Devin that has said all of this stuff, Dave. I just want to point that out.
You don't want to meet Chris Novoselic? I feel like it's the easier thing. And then once I'm friends with Chris Novoselic,
not in lieu of a Dave.
No. But like Chris Novoselic he's in politics, so it would be like, I feel like it'd be easier to shake the hand of Chris Novoselic and become friends with him, and then through my friendship with Chris Novoselic, I get to meet Dave Grohl. I'm climbing the ladder. I'm climbing the Nirvana ladder.
Okay.
You want to jump right to the top with Dave Grohl.
Anyway, yes, it is a physical Kurt.
maybe I'll be a task rabbit for Kyle Gass, right? And that'll be my way in. Like, that's how I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna track down Dave Grohl and be like, I'm Siege and hug me. That's probably gonna work. If you know Dave Grohl, let him know that Siegen wants to hug him. Let's make this happen.
I call it the Bill and Ted method.
The Bill. Man, let's face the music, Siegen. You son of a bitch. I don't even remember what we were talking about because I said Chris Novoselic. We were talking about the
physical.
The physical. Cart. So then what? Yeah, Kurt Cobain. That's what set this whole thing afire. Dave Grohl, I love you too, buddy. Don't think I don't love you. It's just
is there a half-life on physical carts?
That is the question. That is. Thank you, Siegen, for re-steering the ship. Yeah, that's scary, especially because one of the big things is, like limited run games, people are shelling out the money for the limited run physical copy so that they can preserve it, because we all know that one day Switch is going to shut down its eShop, right?
Yes.
When we're playing the next Nintendo console, we're not going to be able to re-download the stuff that we had already paid money for, which is why there's that market that is being filled by pretty much limited run games. Come to find out that like all the other ones that are like outside of the United States, it's just limited run games in partnership with people in those countries.
Right.
I didn't realize that until like most of the internet was bought up by a company this weekend. I don't remember the name of it. It's like Lecheer or something like that. Or did you see this, or was this? I can't tell if it's real or not.
Hey Google, who bought the internet?
The answer is Al Gore, because he had created
she's
it.
Answered.
Oh shoot!
No one and everyone.
No.
Okay. Hey, stop. All right, you can just Google. Just stop.
While Siegen fights with Google, Siegen, I know that you are able to do it because I don't have a secondary computer that I can Google stuff on. Can you look at who bought limited run games this week? Because they bought like everything. Like they were a huge corporation just came in, started acquiring things on the internet.
Yeah, let's check it out.
Really not something I had expected to talk about, but
Embracer,
yes, embrace her. I
Oh,
barely know her.
I was looking at something with Embracer because they also just bought up the rights to a whole bunch of board games as well.
Yeah, they bought
The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
that was the big acquirement for them in the tabletop role playing space. Yeah. Like that is nuts.
Embracer pretty much bought the internet, right? Regardless of what Hey Google has to say about it. It was like I remember just scrolling through a thread on Twitter for all the things that they had bought. And it's a lot of things, but it's what made me realize that limited run games is that. And then going back to it, if these carts that the Nintendo Switch games are being printed on aren't going to last more than 5 years, I mean, that's a problem.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of things to keep in mind, and not every cart is created equally. The tech that is forcing the game to run on a Switch is not necessarily the tech that is preserving the game within the cart. So ideally, if there's an issue on one end, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of the info is borked on the other. It's the reason, like, when your computer fries, you can still pull stuff off of the hard drive, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So like in terms of preservation, just to point that side of it out, the cart not working on its intended system has never really been an issue for preservationists for various reasons, mateys. But this idea being that like that I just can't play it the way that it was intended, and I spent money on the thing 5 years ago. Like, it does kind of upset me a little bit. But I'm getting through it. I have also
and it's not because Ubisoft is shutting down the servers, right?
Yeah, that's a whole other. No, I don't think it's that. Although that might explain why I can't find any of my damn DLC. That's I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I just I've been having 90% of the time amazing time with my new system. Just 10% of the time this issue occurs, and it really kind of is a kick in the nuts. But like I said, I'm able to kind of restart, get back in, and get back to where I was. And I've never had it crash twice in the same session. So it's not like it's consistent to the point where it's stopping me from playing. It's just like, every couple of days it just decides I'm done playing this game. And
yeah, that's weird. I've never heard of anything like that. But it wouldn't be surprising if these carts had some sort of expiration date.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's what we're going to eventually see with NES stuff, right? It's why speedrunners who play on original hardware are scooping up everything that they can. Because they know that someday these games are going to fail.
Yeah, and then, our solution from that was to throw it all on the internet, but we once again come back to the realization even that's not going to be infinite. So we got to figure out what to do next.
Yeah.
Space diamonds. We need that comment.
Well, glass is what they're doing, right? Glass is the thing that they're using for storage.
I said space diamonds. Yeah, no, but the next big thing is going to be optical memory, right? Yeah, that's a whole other.
I'm scared.
In the year 2050, which we will clearly be alive for, actually, which is now freaking sieging out.
Sorry, I didn't mean to give you another existential crisis.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's just, that is. I really hope it's not the cart. That I hadn't even considered that like the carts might already be failing for Nintendo Switch games. 5 years out.
We talked about the Joy-Cons last week.
Yeah, right.
It's only natural that we start looking at other parts of the system, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. That's what it is. It opens up my eyes that, like, other parts of the system might be in jeopardy. I mean, Dale has had to switch over to another Switch, right? I'm still working on my day one, knock wood, but Dale switched over to the Mario one. She was able to get one of the Mario ones, and she's just like, it's making too much noise when I'm playing Pokemon.
Yeah.
So... it's one of those things. It is what it is. No especially technology now. Technology produced after the year 2000 doesn't have the same longevity as tech produced before it. I mean, that's why they invented Y2K, right? Was to make us okay with planned obsolescence.
I
mean, I don't want to be conspiracy
man,
but
we're actually getting to like the true kind of last hurrah of Y2K in the next couple of years here. Like all of the stuff that people were worried about with Y2K, 90% of those problems turned out to not be problems. Another 10% of those that were problems turned out to be easy to solve ones. But there's been a small portion, 9% I guess altogether, of issues that really were problems that we have never quite solved, and we've had like a ticking clock on them. And I guess the year 2020, January 1st, 2022 is gonna be
that already happened. January 1st, 2022 already happened. We're in that year. This is 2022.
January 1st, 2023.
Okay.
Year then that was going on, because this is something that's going on in my company right now. Is they discovered a whole bunch of random files that basically are going to Y2K out on January 1st next year if they don't fix them. And apparently I think it's the Delphi writing system. Some language, some programming language seems to depend on that for its date library. And it's probably because what happened was at that time in 2000, in order to solve this at that night, so that in 1999, I guess, so when 2000 hit, this wasn't an issue, somebody threw 20 more years on the clock just to be we got to do something. So they just dialed everything back 20 years, and then they used this programming language a couple of years later, and it was dependent on that whole thing. And now we're kind of getting to the end of that clock, because as we stated earlier, nobody ever solves any fucking problems. They just kick the can down the road.
All right, so you heard Siegen, ladies and gentlemen. Get ready for Y2K23. It's coming. Start stockpiling.
Yeah, no, just listening about to stuff with companies just dealing with these problems and never truly solving them is becoming more and more apparent every day.
Remember to shut off your computer on 12/31/99. Remember that? That'll fix it. If your computer's off, it will be fine. Jesus.
Oh man,
we really we've never fixed problems, have we?
Not you and me especially.
Well,
no.
It's always future Devin's problem, and future Devin hates present Devin. And there are some times when we're the same dude.
I was all ready for the majority of the show today to be about She-Hulk. You've really thrown me for a loop.
I'm really sorry, man. I was so happy to watch it.
You should be more considerate and make sure that you stay on topic.
You know what I did finish though? I finished Blood and Treasure season 1, and it's not like I didn't already watch Blood and Treasure season 1. It's just that after 3 years, when it finally came back to zero applause, it's one of those ones. So Paramount Plus, right? Let's talk about the last streamer in the room, right? Because it's been there looking at me when you gonna talk about me, bud? And it's maybe the end of the episode, Paramount Plus. I don't know if I'm mad at you or not. I get the emails. Paramount Plus sends out emails. And it tells you when things are new and when to expect things and when things are leaving. There's a reason why I knew. Actually, I'm going to tell a little brief story here. And it is about the survey I took for Paramount Plus, because they asked me how I felt about South Park: The Streaming Wars Part 2. And my big complaint about South Park: The Streaming Wars Part 2 is I didn't know it was going to happen. Because South Park: The Streaming Wars just ends, and it doesn't say to be continued. It literally just sort of ends with everything in shit, and it felt like this real bold way to end the episode, because it's one of those situations that Trey and Matt can poke fun and laugh at all the things that are happening with streaming and the droughts that are going on in the country, but unlike other times with South Park, they don't have an answer. Right? It's not one of these situations where we know how we can fix this, or we have some idea how we would fix it.
Well, and they're no stranger to the shit ending, right? There's plenty of their episodes where things do not go back to normal, right? I think of what's the episode when Stan moves away, right? Or Kyle, when Kyle moves away, that sort of shit.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to end an episode on a down note, for sure.
Exactly. So it just ended, and I'm like, well, that was kind of a we're in a shit place right now. We use the drought as a way to talk about the fact that the streaming and how streaming is working and how it's beginning to collapse the same way that water is beginning to collapse in this country. And it's just like, wow, that was just a humbling episode and like real enjoyable. Like the Streaming Wars special was really enjoyable. And then like a couple of weeks later, I was just on Paramount Plus and it's like part 2 now available. And I'm like, I didn't know there was going to be a part 2. And to the fact that like they leaned into it because on the original Streaming Wars, they just added graffiti of part 1 underneath it, like to be like, oh, we decided that we had more to say. And so I commented, they're like, well, how did you feel about it? I'm like, well, I wish I knew it was coming. Like I didn't expect it to come. And then like it was just there one day. So I watched it. And I've enjoyed what they've been doing on Paramount Plus. But then because of that answer...
Devin, what did you do? you opened the door. You invited the vampire into your house.
I invited the vampire into my house because then they asked if I would like to take a brief survey. And then 90 minutes later... I finished this brief survey that was just like, how do you use Paramount Plus? What do you like about Paramount Plus? What don't you like about Paramount Plus? And I answered the whole thing, like, just honestly, because, like, you know what? If there's one person in this world who's got some shit to say about Paramount Plus, it's Devin Decker. And if you're going to give me a direct line to your little survey side with plenty of text boxes that have 25,000 character limits, I'm going to use all 25,000 characters. But yeah, so Blood and Treasure and The Orville are the two that I think of these shows that like did really well in 2019, got renewed, but then 2020 happened.
Right.
And they just like... Well, they're going to come eventually, right?
So which one is Blood and Treasure again?
Blood and Treasure is the... Is it a
reality show?
No, it's a real... It's a real show. It's not one of these fake, unscripted things. No, it's a scripted television series. It's sort of like Moonlighting. Is I guess the thing I would compare it to. It's if Moonlighting was Indiana Jones.
Oh, Romancing the Stone.
Yeah, perfect, right? Or Jewel of the Nile. Well,
you take your pick, but yes.
And what it is it's Matt Barr, who would go on to play Hoyt in Walker in the interim between the first and second season of Blood and Treasure. And, I can't remember the one who plays Lexi. But essentially, it's Lexi and, oh my God, what's his character name? What's Matt Barr's character's name in the show? It's not important. I'm sure it'll come to me eventually. He's former FBI, and she's a master thief. But when her father was blown up by a terrorist, he was disavowed from the FBI because they needed a fall guy for it. And she blamed him for her father's death. So they went their separate ways. He got into the antiquities trade to reclaim stolen antiquities. So the paintings from World War II, that's what his job became is making
Monuments Men.
Yeah,
Nice.
like Monuments Men. Well, not like Monuments Men because they were just going to say he's a lawyer essentially who's we can strip the pedigree of this. And it does not belong to you. It was stolen from this Jewish family in 1939. You should return it to them before we get the actual lawyers involved.
Right.
Yeah, he's not like that. He's former FBI, so he's capable of doing that stuff. But at the start of the show, he's just like, I'm a lawyer now. While she is still a master thief.
So how does this last seasons?
How does it last? Well, so I don't know. Let me tell you, after rewatching the first season, which has a very clear character and story arc that ends, at the very end of it, they capture the bad guy. And as he's walking away, he's like, I'm sure we'll see each other again soon. It's a small world, Danny McNamara, and Lexi Vaziri. Those are the two main characters.
Those are some names that they chose.
They're great. Oh, Danny Mac. It's such a great show. Human Target is in it. Mark Valley. He plays Danny McNamara's father.
Does he come back to play Human Target in Arrow? Sorry, let's focus.
I've never seen any of the Human Target stuff in Arrow. I have to imagine no.
I think it might be him. I'm pretty sure.
Then there's an episode of Arrow that I need to watch. Is what I have to admit. So the whole series. Yeah.
It's when Ollie's running for mayor. If that gives you any indication of how Human Target works into it.
So okay, I mean that gives me every indication of how Human Target works into it. All I know is that Human Target is the guy who robbed Gun World, And that's like I say that all the time. My dad, we were at like Universal Studios, and he would always name his character after the human target. And he thought it was so cool. He's like, yeah, I'm Chance. And I'm like, oh, cool. That's fun. But yeah, so Blood and Treasure, the first season, what they're looking for is they're looking for Cleopatra and Mark Antony. Because in the beginning of it, they find the tomb of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, but the Cleopatra sarcophagus is gone. But the Mark Antony one is still there. And a terrorist come in, Kareem Farouk comes in as this terrorist, and he murders everybody and steals Mark Antony. So they got to go and they got to find the rest of the body. They gotta find this stuff. And it all turns out that the reason why he wants to do it is because his mother was killed by essentially the microbes that are created from the decaying of flesh in tombs. So when it turned out that like his father just did not agree to help him while his mother was dying, he decided that he would attack the father for it with a big like biological weapon attack that is taking those microbes and weaponizing them. Like the show goes incredible places, and they travel all over the world in search of the tomb of Cleopatra, and there's like a secret brotherhood that is dedicated to the preservation of Cleopatra and her bloodline. The show's incredible, but the first season has a really, really clear, like, we have a story to tell. And then they catch the bad guy at the end of it, and he says, we'll see each other soon, it's a small world. And then the Danny McNamara and Lexi Vaziri, big spoilers for Blood and Treasure, because like I said, it's moonlighting, they kiss, black screen, and then in gold letters that I sent to you just today, it says, "The adventure continues, ...
I mean, it sounds like an airplane novel, and I mean that in the nicest way possible.
Dude,
As a guy that has picked up, read, and loved many an airplane like novel, but it sounds like that is the perfect thing that you pick up at like a Hudson News before you get onto a 3-hour flight, and you burn through the first like half of it, and then you spend the rest of your vacation looking for time to finish the rest of it.
It was perfect pre-pandemic summer entertainment for CBS.
Nice.
That's exactly like Under the Dome, Zoo. Those type of shows where like you're going to be invested, but you know that this has an end date, right? Because there's only so many summer weeks. This isn't going to be 22 episodes.
We didn't know it was going to be endless summer.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So they said the adventure is going to continue, and they were like, Blood and Treasure's coming back, but then the pandemic, and they're like, Blood and Treasure might not be coming back.
Yeah.
And then some Sunday, I believe it was the 11th of July, they just like dripped out. Well, it couldn't have been the 11th of July because that wasn't the Sunday. It was the 8th of July. They dripped out the first 2 episodes of season 2. And then the Sunday after that, even though they're marketed as Paramount Plus exclusives, they aired on CBS. So like, thank God they did that, because that's the only reason that I knew Blood and Treasure had come back. Because in all of the emails, I didn't get anything that said Blood and Treasure is back.
Right.
Which is really weird, because what they try to push in these are the Paramount Plus exclusives. So I don't know what they're doing with that.
Well, I don't know, man, because things are so all over the place. One of the big things we didn't talk about on all of the HBO Warner Discovery stuff is the biggest Warner Brothers premiere this week was fucking Sandman on Netflix.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Like every episode of that show opens with the Warner Brothers symbol flying into view to let you know it is a Warner Brothers production. But it is also a Netflix exclusive. So like Warner Brothers' biggest success of the past few weeks, with everything else around them burning down, is a show on a different streaming service. So God knows what's going on nowadays.
Yeah,
with
but
all
I bet
this
they made fucking bank on that. I mean, the number, the HBO Max number in terms of the debt that was apparently absorbed when they purchased them is like $54 billion.
Yeah.
So if they can get, and this is another thing, if it is tax write-downs, what they would stand to earn back on Batgirl is $70 million of the $90 million that they spent.
Yeah.
Like that's insane. So we're down to $53 billion. Not even, right? That's not even how math works, right? But like that's a chunk away from a $54 billion debt.
Yeah.
Is we can take $70 million on this thing if we stop now.
Yeah, it's just crazy what the entertainment landscape is going to look like going forward because of all of this stuff that has happened, because we acted like we wanted to act like the pandemic was not affecting and everything. So like things like entertainment businesses and stuff kind of just ran themselves ragged, just like pumping stuff out to us. And like it was cool while it was happening, but also at the same time, like they burned through so many resources over the last 3 years. They got to make them back somehow. And I'm not saying that like justifies them like treating customers like crap or artists like crap and all that. It's just don't be surprised that it's going to start happening now, right? Like prices going up left and right, and like crackdowns on password sharing.
The Disney Plus thing, it not working for me, knowing that in 2 months I'm going to have to pay more money for what I'm currently getting. That's really disappointing.
I mean, you know, I would argue that you should try watching Disney Plus on a different device and see what happens.
That's what we're going to try tonight after we finish recording. I mean, I can watch it on my PC, no problem, but I don't want to huddle around a 15-inch screen.
Right.
It's not fun to live in the 40s in 2022. Was there TV in the 40s? Maybe it was the 50s? Whatever. I think you all got the visual that I was trying to paint. But yeah,
warm X-ray filled visual. So it just with all of this stuff going on, right? Like price hikes and all of this, and just to my original point, like you hear so much crap thrown at companies like Netflix, and to that point, sometimes Disney. I won't deny that Disney catches its fair share of shit from people too, and rightly so for shitty business practices. It's just really weird to me that I have not heard much of a peep from people talking about what is going on with HBO right now and Warner Brothers Discovery.
I mean, it's out there. It might just be the echo chamber of Twitter, but this animation thing, this has really set that whole discussion on fire. Because animators, I mean, what it really looks like is just artists they're finding new ways to screw over artists.
Yep.
Being told that you're going to get paid for this thing, and then based on the contract, you're going to get X amount going forward. And then them being like, no, but we have a loophole in there to fuck you over. And then we get to take that money that should go to you.
I mean, what it really reminds me of is a lot of old Hollywood stuff and the ways that they would bury artists and left and right by simply just not producing their work. They would bring people in telling them you're contracted for this movie, so you're going to make this movie, knowing full well they were never going to release it. But what that did is it kept that person busy for 3 months so that they couldn't get out of a contract. They had to have them doing something, or otherwise they were going to go to different companies and stuff like that. Like, and that kind of shit we put a stop to because it was like hampering people's life, like not just their art but like their existence. Although I would argue that an artist like not being able to do their art is definitely
sort of taking away their life,
right? So like it's crazy the ways in which they are just using some of the like grubbiest old school like rejected tactics that we have definitely over the last 30, 40, 50 years come to realize is not the way you should treat people in this industry, and they're just happy to just do it right now because they had a few bad years of weird tax problems and nobody going to the movies.
I mean, you say that, but then one other thing about that is they would produce those movies, but if they don't show, it doesn't fulfill the contract obligation of that person. So then they never get to work again, which is like just the real way that the studio system, screwed people over. But then, like on top of it, we were comparing streaming to the studio system as soon as it started. That like people have exclusivity deals with the streaming service, and that's going to be a problem. Like I remember us talking about it on this very show. So like the chickens coming home to roost is not hyper surprising.
We do an entire second podcast where that's a huge part of the late in life of the artist we talk about.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. Okay, so last thing, Blood and Treasure. I'm going to be starting season 2, probably with the whole family. I wanted to refresh it, and while they were away, it seemed like the time to do it. If you're not going to watch Blood and Treasure, based on what I said, you're doing yourself a disservice, or you don't have Paramount Plus. But if you can watch one episode, and I'm sure it's out there if you want to, go on the high seas that Sejin has been yo-ho-hoing about most of this episode. See, episode 6, Escape from Casablanca, maybe one of the best episodes of television produced in the last 5 years.
That's awesome.
Like, it is just super good. And as somebody who's been to Casablanca, like, it really reflects not through the rose-colored glasses that is the film. And that's interesting to me that they take the time to do that.
The Nazi-filled rose-colored glasses of Casablanca, the movie.
Well, you know, there's refugee camps like right outside of Casablanca, but it's also a huge tourist spot.
Uh-huh.
That's what I'm talking about. The fact
that's how the world works.
That's how the world, and that's the way the news goes. Wubba lubba dub dub. Can they sue us? Can HBO Max sue us for Rick and Morty stuff, or is there stuff like we're gonna end up paying that $54 billion debt right now? Right? I just fucked us.
Nah, why would they care? They're probably just gonna cancel Rick and Morty in 2 weeks anyway.
Well, I mean, they got the sixth season coming, and then it will probably be canceled. Well, it's already guaranteed for 10 seasons, but like that's the crazy thing. Everybody's saying that Doom Patrol, which is another favorite on this show, obviously Brendan Fraser, but also really, really good show. Watch it if you have HBO Max, because I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be gone soon. It's everybody's like it's going to get canceled, but if it gets canceled, they'll show the fourth season, right? I don't know if they are, based on everything else, right?
Really
like,
don't know exactly. If they never put it out, do they save themselves some money on the back end somewhere?
Yeah,
by never putting that out again.
And
yeah,
are they just going to stack up all those back end savings? Like
I kind of joked when they did the whole axing of Batgirl and Scoob and all that stuff. Scoob 2, I should say, or Scoob the Christmas sequel. I don't know.
It was definitely a sequel.
The Holiday Haunt or something like that.
Haunted Holiday.
Haunted Holiday. Thank you. But this idea being that like we joked about like, well, what are they just doing this just to garner interest in these projects, and then enough people demand it, then they put it out on HBO and they win a bunch of praise, Snyder Cut style, right? But I'm actually like, tin hat, like conspiracy time. I wouldn't be surprised if in all of this, if something doesn't get that treatment at this point, right? And I'm not saying that they're planning it for anything in particular, but I wonder if there is a part of them that is so like ballsy in the ways in which they have just pulled the cord on so many projects that were garnering so much like fan like respect. If there's not maybe one or two of these that are right in that line where they're like, yeah, and if we hear enough about them, maybe we'll put out a special episode or like bring it back, but no new episodes in like a year, and people will like lose their shit and we'll gain a bunch of subscribers again, at that time, a la the Snyder Cut, right? Like they've learned some terrible lessons from that. And now I really have to wonder if anything involved in any of this stuff right now, if this is not the last we've heard of any of it, because they have that in their back pocket, that they can always do the surprise re-release and garner back a bunch of support all of a sudden.
Oof, dude. I mean, where I take it, right, is one step further than that. Look at what they've gotten with Sandman, right? So any of these projects that they're saying we're not going to put on our thing, if they can show that there's an interest in it and Netflix is willing to pony up the cash for it, that's direct money in their pocket.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that would be more enticing to them, because we see that you're not really making money on the subscribers, right? We talked about they only pay the $6 to get into the Golden Corral, right? And then when you put out like Prime Rib, you don't get to charge more money because they're already in your
yeah, you've already charged them to come in the door, right? Yeah.
Right? So if all this stuff they have that clearly has some value, right? Based on how people are talking about it and the way that people are reacting. I mean, what wouldn't Netflix love to buy like Mau Mau, where like, oh, you guys get to look like the fucking heroes, right? You canceled all this animation, but you're going to bought this already completed season that we have, put it on Netflix, and you garner a bunch of goodwill, and we get the money from you.
Right. Well, the bigger one that's closer to that than you realize is Harry Potter. One of the big ones that you mentioned was the loss of all 8 Harry Potter films, right? And there is already a pretty consistent year-to-year time in which Harry Potter, all 8 of them, run nonstop on Freeform when they get into their Christmas and November nonsense where they just start playing Christmas movies for 2 months straight, right? And part of that whole thing is Harry Potter. And it's been huge for the last 2 or 3 years that they do that. So you noted that they were leaving HBO. I pointed out, well, yeah, it's probably because they're going to go to their usual home for Christmas, right? Their vacation home that they go to. But now that you've mentioned all of this, I mean, imagine Disney like desperate to get their hands on every franchise out there, has the opportunity to say we are the new home of Harry Potter, and it's just Warner Brothers produced just because they want to collect the paycheck on it, but Disney picks up the bag, like, oh man, but that's choice for both parties involved, and easily already started because Freeform is under that umbrella. So like it's just a couple of steps away from that being a reality.
I mean, I've been thinking the same thing. I bet Disney would love to have DC and Marvel, right? And be your one-stop shop for comic book movies.
Oh my God, head explode. No, we can't think about that right now. That's oof.
Yeah, that's a bit too dystopian for the Friday energy, right? Because I want to go out, I want to party after this recording, right? This only got me more amped up for the excitement that's going to be this Friday night. Which I think that means that it's a good time to cut it, right? Like I wanna take this excitement and I wanna put it into other endeavors.
Because I want to go cut the rug.
You want to cut the rug.
We are actually wild and crazy guys.
Whoa. So last thing I have to say is I said I was going to finish Blossom Tales. I still haven't done it because that game just keeps being like a joy to play. I think I'm going to just plow through it, and then I find myself exploring some village for hours.
There was something about your syntax when you started that, as I thought you were going to go in a completely different direction and could not keep up with you when you turned it around. So, okay, you're enjoying your time with it, which is why you have not finished it yet.
Immensely enjoying my time. Like I thought it was going to be a game that I would just fart through, like quick speed through it, especially, Link to the Past, and it's essentially Link to the Past. Right. But, like, the more I play it, the more I'm like, I'm really enjoying my time here. And I'm disappointed because I want to play the sequel that released this week. You know what? There is some stuff I don't like. There are a couple of puzzles where I'm just like, I don't need this puzzle anymore. This puzzle is a relic from the 90s.
I am running into that exact same problem with some of the block sliding puzzles in the Rabbids game, as I'm just like, I love me a block sliding puzzle, but this is the third one in like 5 minutes, and they've all been so obvious and easy. And like, I don't want to be that guy that's like, I'm too smart for these, they're boring. It's just that, like, give me some level of growth. If you're gonna put 3 in a row, like, show me why it's worth doing it, and not it's wild how quick you like hit like a wall on those puzzles in those games. It's a hard thing to balance though in those types of games, right? Is like, this is not normal play. This is a way to kind of teach you this is a different thing kind of outside of it. If it's too far outside of it, you might not even like it. Is a huge risk, right? But I've so far with my time with Blossom Tales have yet to really run into that issue. But I am not nearly as far along as you, and I'm not putting in nearly as much time per day as you are.
So the issue that I'm finding is like, if they were stacked, maybe I could get that chance to learn, is the fact that, like, the easiest one, and one that you've probably done, is the Simon puzzle that you have to do to get into the first real dungeon.
Right.
And then there are more Simon puzzles out in the world, and that first one you need to do it 3 times, right?
Right.
The next one, you have to do 8 of them.
Whoa.
Like, you get up to 8 that you have to go through in order to clear it. And then I found the last one, and it's like 12. And I'm just like, this is too many of these. Like,
I have a musically inclined family member, and the way that their brain works is so choice for those kinds of puzzles. Stardew Valley, when they introduced the island expansion, there is a section where you have to do Simon puzzles, and I was just hitting a wall because it was like, do 3, do 5, do 8, do 12. Like, it was just like, oh my God, I can't keep up with this. And so I just sat them down next to me, and they were just like, it's this, bop, 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 bop. And I was like, okay. And then the next thing they were like, it's this one, bop, 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 bop. It was like, yes. It's like, I have a built-in unit that basically just like spouts the information back to me on those puzzles. So I never have to worry about Simon puzzles.
The sound that they use in Blossom Tale is grating. It is not a good sound.
Yeah.
I will say that. Like, that was part of it, was just like, I want this to be done. I can't hear these tones anymore. And like, they stack on top of each other. Like, there'll still be the resonant frequency of the one you've just cleared, and then they'll start the next one. And it's just like, this is too much for my brain to process right now. Like, I guess.
Yeah, see, the best ones of those are the ones where, like, each one is a consecutive note and there's almost like a rhythm to it, because not only does it sound good and makes it tolerable, if you fuck it up, you have to do it again, but also it actually does make it easier to play those kinds of puzzles, to succeed at those kinds of puzzles, if there is a pattern to, like, follow. So like the idea of it being resonant tones that just build on top of one another before it becomes unlistenable feels like it's another level of like roadblock to the puzzle that does not need to be there.
Here's the worst part of it, right? So it is randomized every time, which I'm fine with that. I don't mind that it's randomized every time, but if I go through like 4 cycles, so the first one is 3, the second one is 4, the third is 5, and then the fourth is 6th. If I fail on the 5th one, I go back to the start.
Oof.
And it's all randomized again. And it's like, and it's true randomization. I have to give credit to that, because one of them I had to hit the same pillar 6 times. And if that's not an indicator of true randomization, nothing is.
Yeah, no, that's true. It just keeps saying 1, but I can't tell if it's broken or working.
Exactly. And that's how you truly randomize numbers. But yeah, so that is the one complaint I have. And especially as like, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And it's like, I like this and I'm glad that you guys put it in there. But these puzzles, I immediately think of the banana birds in Donkey Kong Country 3. And the fact that the first one you get, it's a 4-tone thing, and then you get the banana bird. And then they continually build until the last one is, I think, 30 of them. But again, it's just 30 of them in a row. It's not like starting with a 4-tone and then building up to a 30-tone.
Right.
Like, at some point, it's like, I really hope that they learn from that section of it. That's what I want to say. Because that is one that I have a complaint about. And then the sliding block puzzles, it's just like, I get it, guys. I don't want any more of these. I really like the ones where you need to walk on a certain pattern, because my mind really just works for those.
Yeah, right. Where you have to fill out the whole floor and don't step on a one you've already stepped on. Yeah,
yeah.
That,
those
I
are fun, and it's fun, and it reminds me of Link's Awakening. Link's Awakening had a bunch of puzzles like that. So it's fun and it's enjoyable to do those ones. But like the other ones, and that's why I'm a little nervous about going into the sequel. I hope that there's not as big a reliance on puzzle stuff. Because at the end of the day, the reason why early games had that stuff was to pad out the difficulty of the game. So you felt you were getting more value from your purchase.
Yeah, well, and you know, like talking about like Link specifically and Legends of Zelda, right? Like it's referencing like a fantasy role-playing world where like that kind of stuff comes up all the time in like D&D and fairy tales and stuff like that. So there is like source like evidence for that sort of stuff to be there, right? So like it does add like some magic to the world, but the second that you start kind of depending on that, or it becomes the main focus, it becomes a puzzle game. And if that's the kind of game you're gonna make, just make that puzzle, right? Just make that game, because I'll play the shit out of that too if I go into it knowing that's what I'm going to play. But if I want to play Link to the Past and I'm stuck on a sliding block puzzle for 20 minutes, I start to lose my cool.
Oracle of Ages, this is going to be the last thing, and then we'll send this one off to the vault. There's a puzzle in the second dungeon. There's a sliding block puzzle, and there's just not enough blocks in the room to push in order to solve it. And they're like, yeah, so you just push this pot. This pot can be pushed. And it's like, well, you could never push pots before in a Zelda game. Why would that be what my mind thought I had to do?
Well, and if I remember correctly, you also can't do that everywhere, right?
Right.
Like, it's only in that room that you can do that one time.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just one of those situations where I'm like, what is happening?
Minish Cap has the ability to push pots. I will say that is actually a part of solving a puzzle, but it's consistent throughout the entire game. You can do that throughout the entire game.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's something that they randomly introduce for one puzzle and then it's gone.
It is purely the Capcom created Zelda games. So the two Oracle games and Minish Cap, because that's the contract that they had, those are the only 3 where pushing pots is a solution to puzzles. And it's nuts to me. Like, and there's nothing that says, why don't you try pushing pots? It's not like in Link's Awakening where you have to throw the pot to open the chest, and like there's actually something that says, if a chest is stuck, why don't you try throwing something at it?
Yeah.
Like it's
But one of the nice things in Minish Cap, I will say, is that there is a clear there's a clear ludological moment where you as Zelda, when you as Link, I can't believe I just did that, where you as Link become tiny, where you want to try picking up a pot because you want to see if Tiny Link can do it, and that's when you realize, oh no, but I can push him around, and it is that moment where you realize you can push pots that it's like much later where that becomes solution to puzzles, but by that point you've already figured that out through the actual just gameplay mechanics and your own natural curiosity, and they kind of know that. And so like I really like that. The problem is something like in the Oracle games, which came before Minish Cap, the idea that would just be something you would just do in that one room is ridiculous, because like they need to teach it to you. Like you were saying, there needs to be some way that it's explained or introduced to the player.
Yeah. I don't know, but Blossom Tale is good. Hopefully I'm done by next week so I can start the second one. But yeah, let's. I think we're good. Anything else that you want to add? I mean, we've got a lot in here, and I'm excited. This was a fun episode to record.
No, got some more people to watch Xanadu.
Nice.
Yeah, no, not much else. Anne Heche passed away this week.
Yeah.
Just want to say that like there's definitely been some times in my life where Anne Heche was like, my mother and I watched 6 Days, 7 Nights, I think 3 times when we rented it from Blockbuster.
I once watched 6 Days, 7 Nights for 6 days and 7 nights because it was the only movie that played at a hotel I was staying at. So
man,
it's there, and it is as a good movie. I also liked Men in Trees. That was another good thing that Anne Heche did. I really liked that show. Real Northern Exposure vibes there. So yeah, R.I.P. Anne Heche, and it's another one of those Anton Yelchin style ones, right? Where like it is. I mean, it's never great when you lose somebody, but when it's tragic like that,
and when it's unnecessary, almost like there's for sure. Just wanted to say, there's people out there that are discussing her works right now, so you can find people that are much more well equipped to talk about her work and her place in film history. But you should look it up if you haven't watched anything with her. She definitely has some classics out there that are worth eyeing.
Yeah, and then start with 6 Days, 7 Nights, and if you can handle her in that, you will probably enjoy everything else that she has ever touched and been a part of.
The biggest sin that movie commits is making you want to see Harrison Ford as still sexy. It is just, that movie is so convinced that you are still super into Harrison Ford, and I don't know, maybe at the time people.
I don't know, man. If Harrison Ford were here right now, I would be in clear and present danger. Patriot Games. Firewall, bear witness, Siegen. That's it. I don't think I have any more. Air Force One, get off my plane. All right. So, if you are able to get what's his name, Aquaman, King of Atlantis, Siegen would like to hear about it on Twitter at Siege versus the World.
Yeah, and if you're interested in finding out more about the 4K up-res of Megas XLR, hit up Devin at Devin D. Decker. He'll be happy to talk to you about it.
I will always talk to you about Megas. Please come a knockin'. But until then, William, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Siegen Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.